Today on Locked On Canadiens, we are going to try to read between the lines of the Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton press conference, and then we're going to make wild speculative statements about what they're about to do.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Canadiens. We want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. As you know, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. So please subscribe and tell your friends. Thank you so much as well. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every day. And today we are here to discuss the Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes end of season presser. And my name is Laura Saba, also known as the Active Sick. Joining me today, as always, is the wonderful Ian Boisvert, who's actually taking a couple of days off coming up. Ian, are you ready to discuss insights from the press conference with Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton?
I am, but let's start. I want to start with a question really quick. How are you with the ship name of Hugo? People like to say like Hugo when they're referring to this front office, meaning of course Hughes and Gorton.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it? I found myself writing it in my notes and being like, I don't know if I really want to do that.
It's an easy way to say it, and because if I don't use it sometimes, I'll say like Kent Gorton and Jeff Hughes, which is it is a mouthful. The Habs management team, I don't know, we need a cuter name than Hugo for them. So everybody get on this. Let's discuss a name for Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton. And I must say, I do love their relationship so much.
Yeah, no, it's a real Mutt and Jeff routine they have going on up there, which is just always fun. I find that they're both so confident and so comfortable in the way that they see the world unfolding around them in the NHL. I find every time I find a renewed respect for what these guys are doing, just in what they're trying to balance. Balance was a big word that they used a lot throughout this. And I think that's what's going to sort of play out over the summer is how they play that balance out. But I always leave with just the hockey nerd part of my brain, just like very full and very happy after listening to these guys talk. Because I mean, it was just, let's be honest, Bergevin had a lot of strengths. Talking to the media was not one of them. He really struggled with this aspect of his job. It was always very confrontational. And maybe it gets to be that way with these guys eventually, and we'll have to see how they play through it. But right now, like they're just out there vibing. And I really appreciate it just from they're matching the energy of the fan base from what I see.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like what I really like too is that they're very clear on what they can and can't say. So if they can't tell you something, they won't make it up. They'll just say we can't talk about it, right? Or they'll make jokes about it. So, what they're sharing with you is as much as they can. And we talked about this early in their tenure too. This team has a lot of transparency now with the fans and the media that we didn't experience in the past, right? And not a whole lot of teams do this. And a lot of teams will they'll give canned responses, they'll obfuscate, if that's a word. And they'll just try and kind of pull wool over your eyes or give you responses that don't really reveal anything. And there's nothing absolutely wrong with that. But, a lot of times like they'll say something like, we can't answer that because there's 31 other teams in the league that are going to find this information useful, right?
Yeah, who are waiting to get any kind of advantage we give. There was a moment where, Jeff Gorton was asked about or was told insofar as the Canadiens need a number 2 center. Everybody in the city knows it. And he just goes, really? And that was to me the biggest pop of the entire press conference, because it shows like he knows that everybody says that the Canadiens needed a second line center. We're going to talk about that later, so I don't want to go too deep into that. But then he had mentioned something along the lines of like, is this going out to all 32 teams, all the 31 teams in the NHL? Oh, okay, then I'm not going to say much. Like the Canadiens are trying their very best to not broadcast what they're trying to do. Yeah. Throughout their tenure together, they've been very effective at that. Like there's not a lot of times where we know what they're going to do.
Right. And that's the thing too, is that they give us as much information as possible without revealing their hand. And I think that's like, it's such a skill, right? Like, and so one telling thing that I thought was really important was kind of how giddy Kent Hughes got when Lane Hutson was mentioned. And we are going to talk about that in the second segment because we do have to. But it's just like sometimes like you just look at like these guys, like, yes, it's a business and they have to be ruthless, and we've seen them make trades that have made us unhappy and probably them unhappy too. But at the end of the day, like I feel like they really love their team, right? Which is,
Yeah.
it's not just a job to them. Like I feel like they're hockey nerds about their own team, which I thought was really funny.
Yeah, no, they definitely are. One of the things that I took away from the two main takeaways that I had, one is just a kind of factual statement about where they see this team, and another is more of just an insight that I gathered on how they want to evaluate their players. The first one was that they were very clear this is not a finished product. Like,
Yes.
not done building this. They're happy with their players as a group, but every player can be better. They know that they have to add. They said there's not one part of our team that we're done with, which is
Which is
great.
really interesting because
Yeah,
when he got a goaltender question later, he talked about how happy they were with the goaltenders they have.
right. Right. But I think it speaks to, in the sense that they're not done with that aspect of their team, is one, Jacob Fowler's still developing.
Right.
Two, Jakob Dobish is still developing. Three, what is Caden Primo?
Yes.
Like that's a big question mark for this team. Sam Montembeault is the only like kind of known quantity for this team at this moment. So I found that to be interesting. But I also found that when they were talking about players not hitting their expectations, they always looked at it through the lens of, he probably expected more from this part of his game, right? They said that about Slafkovský. They said that about Kent Hughes said that about Alex Newhook, and I found that to be very interesting. That he said that Newhook probably wanted more from himself offensively this season, but the coaching staff's main objective with Newhook this year was developing him more defensively and teaching him to use his speed not only for offense but for defense. So it sort of seems like the team allows for these players to have their own evaluations of themselves. And sometimes those square with what the team expects them to be. And other times they don't. Like maybe the Canadiens, of course, they would have liked more offense from Alex Newhook. But in the same sense that, Cole Caulfield the last two seasons, and Kent Hughes made this parallel himself, they were cool with him, taking a step back offensively over the last few years to improve his 200-foot play. And wouldn't you know it, this year, his 200-foot game was great, and he scored 37 times. Like, I find that they have such a bird's eye view of everything that's happening in front of them. And the Alex Newhook one was especially, telling, not only in that that's where they see this player right now, but in making that comparison to Cole Caulfield, there is an expectation that eventually you're going to be able to do both of those things. You're going to be able to score at a rate you feel comfortable with and participate defensively. I found that just sort of lens in which they see their players' expectations to be really refreshing.
Yeah. And there was something really, sorry, I'm changing the subject entirely
Do it.
because I really want to get to this point. There was something that really stood out to me because they got asked so many times about size. They got asked about second line center every which way possible. They got asked about Kirby Dach 700 times. Like every journalist kept asking the same question or different ways to try to get an answer. The size question kept coming up, right? And Kenny Hughes said something really, really interesting. And it's something that I thought about. He's like, it's not necessarily just about acquiring size. It's also about the players that are here right now learning to use their size effectively, right? And I think that, and I believe that he tied it to this being their first experience in the playoffs. And I believe that, right? Because when you look at the team, it's not necessarily just that, okay, yes, they should add some size, they should add some toughness, but there are players that could have played a more bruising game, right? Like, I'm not saying everybody has to be Josh Anderson. That's crazy, right? But I'm saying that Josh Anderson, having the experience that he's had in the past, elevated his game and elevated his physical game in the playoffs to a different level, right? So I believe that that's a hint that he's telling his players, like, a couple of you guys gotta do a Josh Anderson, right? And I don't think that like there's anything wrong with that, right? Like I think it's fair to say that they were out-muscled and that it's not necessary for them to be out-muscled in the future if they do things a little bit differently. I thought that was incredible.
Yeah. And the word that kept getting thrown around outside of size, compete.
Yeah.
I found that was because that's a mentality. That's a culture you build, right? Is that you just don't quit, which is what this team had sort of been built on, right? Like the narrative we built around this team this year was that they don't quit. I think when Hughes mentioned, there were big guys who were playing for the first time. It was Slafkovský. He's talking about Juraj Slafkovský. We don't need to dance around that, right? And I think that's a totally rational thought to have about Juraj Slafkovský. This was his first time doing this. He's always going to be 6'4". So is Josh Anderson, but Josh Anderson has been 6'4" in the playoffs before.
Yes.
And Juraj Slafkovský has not. This was his first time, and we saw glimpses of it. I thought he was really good as the series developed, but
he got better. Exactly.
But that standard is going to go up, right?
Yeah.
Next year is not going to be your first time if they make the playoffs again. So it's really, I found that this entire thing is just like candy for me. I really enjoy listening to these guys like dissect this team. I built a whole show about it before I joined this one, trying to figure out how they think. So every time they actually do tell us how they think, I find it to be very helpful. So I don't have to mind read. We can just actually hear what they have to say.
Absolutely. And we are going to talk a little bit about, or we're going to do a bit of mind reading or reading between the lines. And we're going to talk about off-season signings. Lane Hutson was mentioned, but there were a couple of names that weren't really thrown out there that I think we can get hints from what they said. And that's coming up in just one moment here on Locked On Canadiens.
An award-winning mattress can change your life. I speak from experience. It happened to me. After years of uncomfortable sleeps, I recently switched to Bear Mattress, and the results were instant. Bear Mattress is designed with a focus on recovery, cooling, and pressure relief to upgrade your sleep and improve your overall quality of life. I used to deal with night sweats, but Bear's best-in-class cooling ensures optimal temperature regulation, which prevents overheating and helps me stay comfortable all night long. Bear offers a wide variety of mattresses, but to get the right one for you, take their sleep quiz that matches you to your perfect mattress based on body type and sleep preferences. Go to bearmattress.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL at checkout to get 40% off site-wide. This offer is not available anywhere else. You have to use my promo code on the very last page of checkout to get this discount. That's bearmattress.com. Use my promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get 40% off site-wide. Bearmattress.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL.
So you know what's going on right now as we're recording this is that there's a bunch of people that are watching the draft lottery. Do you know what we're not doing? We are not watching the draft lottery.
We're hoping Calgary wins it for whatever reason, but I mean, even if they do, I don't know if Montreal would get it because the conditions on that. We will know after this when that pick is. It's over after this draft lottery. We will finally we will need to know. And what it's looking like is Montreal picks 16 and 17, which is cool because you can package both those if you want to move up. You can package both of them for, I don't know, a second line center if that's your sort of thing.
If that's a need, I don't know. Nobody's ever talked about it. No. All right. So now I lost my train of thought. Before we get to the Lane Hutson hints, there were a couple of things that were said about off-season contracts. And I like the way that it was framed kind of by the people asking the questions as well as by Kent Hughes was like people in Laval pushing for a spot, right? So then Kent Hughes said something like, if we go out and sign a guy or get a guy that has 3 or 4 years left on his contract, what kind of message are we sending that to the people in Laval? And I thought, listening to that, I was like, that is actually a message that he's sending to Christian Dvorak and Yoel Armia. That's what I thought.
Yeah, you're really, he's telling them, it seems like maybe they'd be comfortable with those guys coming back for short term. Sure. But yeah, like the idea of Armia or Dvorak signing for 4 years and blocking a guy like, Florian Xhekaj at some point, Owen Beck at some point, right? Like we're blocking those players from getting here. I will say though, at some point, we need to make the jump here to stop thinking about these guys' development if they are not going to help this team now. I understand like their development is important. However, we are within like 2 years of them being like, we can't wait for you to become that player. We need to get that player now.
Yeah.
We're not there yet. We're not there yet, which is why like if they sign a vet, it's probably for a couple years. It's probably not for a super long time. I think that if they're solving, and we'll get to the 2C or not 2C later, but like anybody like that, they want a lot of term. They want a guy who's young and can mesh with the core of this group. a la Dylan Cousins, right? Like that would have made sense for them had they had a Josh Norris to trade the other way, right? But we'll get into that later. We have to talk about Lane Hutson right now because they were very giddy about Lane Hutson, just like the rest of us were.
We love Lane Hutson. Like this, honestly, like if I am Kent Hughes, I'm kicking myself a little bit because the second I finished that press conference, I'm stepping off the stage and Lane Hutson's agent is calling me nonstop.
Yeah, you have missed 8 calls from Sean Coffey, who is Lane Hutson's agent.
Because Lane Hutson himself said he would like to get this done sooner rather than later. As you know, he can sign as of July 1st. He still has a year left on his contract. And, you got asked, what about, are you inclined to have these conversations now, right? And then he brought up that with Cole Caulfield, it was in the final year of his contract. But with Juraj Slafkovský, it was not, right? Like it all depends on what, and Caden Gooley.
So it's 2-1 in that respect, right? We've seen 2 of them where he hasn't waited and 1 of them where he did. So like it's almost more obvious that it's going to happen this summer if you're looking at those examples.
Well, this is the thing. And so for those of you who constantly would reply to the Instagram and the Twitter of the Canadiens sign Lane Hutson, like sign Cole Caulfield, now you have the opportunity to bother them about something else.
No, please. Hey, really? Don't. I'm sorry. Just don't do that. Like the social people have nothing to do with that. I understand why you're doing it, but also chill out.
It's also like really annoying for them. Like literally, it's 1,000%. Really annoying for them. They're out there trying to produce content, and everything is just like, I'm not even going to look at this video that you made or this thing that you wrote. I am going to bother you about signing Lane Hutson. But here's the thing. Lane Hutson is motivated. He just wants to play hockey. He's so good. He's incredible. And I think he's excited to be here. I think he likes being part of this, right? Like I think he likes being part of a solution, which to me, I feel like he's such a hockey nerd. Again, I haven't spoken to him. I don't know, but he's such a hockey nerd that I really feel that like he prizes himself on being part of a solution, part of building something, which is really, really cool, right? So that's promising. But at the same time, this man is about to win a Calder Trophy. This boy is about to win a Calder Trophy. He will be a boy. When he's 36 years old, he will still look like a Victorian child. But that's the thing. So like if you're Lane Hutson, like it might be a little bit more difficult than we think for the Canadiens and the player to come to an agreement. Because if you're asking me, I'm like max term, max money. Just do it. It doesn't matter. Do it.
Yeah. I think the player wanting to get this done as soon as possible bodes well for the Canadiens. Not that it's leverage to hold over the player, but there's less runway for him to get better in front of us and demand more money.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's sort of like think back to when the PK Subban contract debacle took place. Right. He held out for a little bit in that lockout season. He ended up signing a bridge contract, and he essentially told the Canadiens, okay, but when I'm done, my number's 8. And then he won the Norris, and he was great. And then they got to the table, and he said, my number's 8. And the Canadiens were like, we can't believe this. Yeah. Right? They gave him more runway and gave him more leverage because he could have asked for more at that point, given the player that he had become. The more time you give these players to play it out, the more time that they have to demand more money. That's why the Slafkovský contract makes a lot of sense because, at the time, letting him play out another year of that deal would have allowed him to potentially hit a higher level in his career. And now you're paying him north of 8.5 instead of below 8, right? So I think Lane wants to be here, which is incredible news, especially because there's this stigma about American college kids coming to Canadian teams and wanting out. Johnny Gaudreau was an example of that. He just wanted to be closer to home. Matthew Tkachuk got out the first chance he got. Like, there are guys who just don't really want to be around that, and that's their right. But Hutson wants to be here. That's a really great situation to be in. It's funny with what Hughes was saying. He was very giddy at the beginning, and then I think towards the end of his answer tried to reel it back and tried to say, well, it's not the biggest priority for us this summer, and we're going to talk and see where those conversations had. I'm like, they already have a number. Like this idea that we're just going to start talking soon. Now we're past that, man. Like you're not fooling me on that one. You are not fooling me.
Both sides know what they want. But it was really funny because he got so excited, right? Like they love this player. And this is the thing, like you never know what kind of, contract he comes in on, because here's the thing. I expected Lane Hutson to be good, but did I expect him to be this good? I don't think so. Like, I honestly, like, I don't think so. Like, I thought he was going to be good, and I thought it was going to take him longer to get to where he was. And
Yeah.
I don't, again, very promising player. I'm very, very excited to discuss his season in a season review, hopefully coming up soon. We will.
Do you
We'll
remember
get
at the
started on
beginning
those.
of the season where there were some people who were thinking he was going to start in Laval, and just how crazy that sounds now? Like, it's kind of it's almost asinine to think about that was ever a conversation point. Like, this guy's not leaving. This is the only league he'll ever play in. Like, he's not going to another one.
Not only that, but he's gonna be on top 5 lists at some point.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
I mean, he's already in that list for rookies, but I mean in defensemen, right?
Yeah.
All right. Before we run out of time, we should talk to the dilemma of the day, which is what Montreal is going to be talking about. I feel like I miss goaltending controversies a lot because now we got to talk about second line centers, and we will be back with another edition of 2C or Not 2C coming up in just one moment. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It is the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost, they are always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. They're green little wonders that pack a protein punch. And whether you're running between meetings, dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right. So I don't know if you heard about this, but the Canadiens are looking for a second line center.
No, that's crazy. I mean, with there's all these articles about how they have it figured out, right?
Yeah.
That's done.
It's done. Okay, so you're like, let's talk about Kirby Dach, okay? I think the most telling, there's a lot of conversations, a lot of questions about him. I think they wanted a ruling on this. And I don't think that it's black and white like that. And I think Jeff Gorton said something. He said, I think there's a place in the lineup for Kirby. We just don't know where that is yet.
Well, there's slightly different wording to that, which I think is very important. He said there's a place for him in our lineup. It is up to him where that is going to be. I found it interesting that they caveated his season with the injury, right? It's important context to view the Kirby Dach experience through, right? But they both kind of came to the realization that we still need more from him. Hughes said that this isn't his last chance, like, right? They still believe in him. That's not his last chance, but it's an important season for him. He knows it. And until then, we have hope. They still think this guy can be that player.
Yeah,
but,
and here's the other thing.
Yeah, it's up to him.
Yeah, and he kind of took offense to the notion that this was his last chance, right?
Yeah.
And there was a lot of words. Now I can't remember which one of them said it. They talked about the mental part of coming back from an injury that devastating, right? And they spent a lot of time on that. And I do feel that the conversation that's being had right now is, yes, you need to recover physically from this injury, but you got to get your head straight too, which is something that I think a lot of people pointed out, right? Like, that's not an easy thing to go through. That's, and he's also like a relatively young guy, and he's a boy, right? Like, he's not going to like willingly go out and seek mental clarity or help. Right. And so this is them being like, figure it out or get therapy.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, look, I think the Canadiens have done a really good job with their athletic therapists. Their sports scientists. I know that helped Yoel Armia get his career back on track, so to speak. I think that's really important, and it'll be important for this team moving forward because, I mean, injuries are a part of this sport. I thought it was interesting. Speaking of injuries, and it'll be a slight sidetrack from 2C or Not 2C, but the Patrick Laine conversation happened very early in this presser.
Yeah.
And Kent Hughes flatly said the Montreal Canadiens are not a playoff team if Patrick Laine isn't here. And he's completely right. And I think we all kind of forgot that, given the way that the season ended for him. And that they said he was so willing to learn and improve, and he wanted to be on this team. He wants to be a Montreal Canadian. Like, that matters. But that's not to see or not to see, but I wanted to bring that up.
Yeah.
Also, part of the to see or not to see conversation is the not to see part of what Jeff Gorton ended up saying. I don't know if you caught this, but they asked him about improving the second line, and he very pointedly said there are some 100-point wingers who drive lines. So he is not leaving that out of the realm of possibility that second line, well, yes, they'll obviously have a center. Every line does. But that might not be the focal point of that line, and it may be a winger like Ivan Demidov one day. And I found that to be so interesting because he's done that before. He signed Artemi Panarin in New York. That is a 100-point winger who drives that line, right? Like, that is an exact analog for what he kind of mentioned there. I'm not saying that's their, and I don't think Jeff Gorton is saying that that's their primary option, but if they think Ivan Demidov is going to be that kind of player, well, then that problem's solved.
They're
right?
less
And then
stressed out about who's playing center, right?
Right. And they can just hope that maybe Kirby Dach develops that defensive part of his game, maybe wins a couple more faceoffs. And hey, look, now you've got a second line that's cooking with gas.
Yeah.
Right. But we'll have to see how that plays out. I found that to be very interesting that he took time out of that answer to say, well, there are some wingers that drive lines too.
Yeah.
It's very, they're looking at this from all angles. And I found that to be a very revealing line from Jeff Gorton.
I also like, they got asked, like, do you regret not adding at the deadline knowing how the playoffs turned out? And he was like, no.
No regrets is what he said.
Like, we left it up to the players, and they, they delivered, essentially, was what he was saying. I thought that was really interesting. You know what I felt was that in the last couple of years, like, there had been more questions about Nick Suzuki, and this time I don't think there were any.
Yeah. I mean, they asked about Nick Suzuki's sort of desire to not go backwards, which I think is important. And I thought Nick Suzuki was very honest about his expectations for this team and where he knows they're headed, right? They're just by default of them losing, David Savard and potentially Christian Dvorak and potentially Yoel Armia, they're going to get younger just mathematically. Their average age is going to get younger. And at what point, I found that the line from Hughes that was interesting, and he said it in French, but translated to English, there's a balance that needs to be found between adding experience, meaning getting guys who know how to do that, and making experience, like getting that for your players now. Because you can add another David Savard. Does that add more experience to the guys who are here? No, not really. It gives them a guy who is more experienced, but it doesn't make Juraj Slafkovský any more experienced. It doesn't make David Reinbacher next season any more experienced. So I found that, again, like, just the way that they see this, they probably find more value in letting these guys play and letting them get themselves into situations where they'll need to learn how to be in those situations.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if David Savard, if they get another type of player who's going to take all of those hard moments away from them, they're not learning anything.
And they do need to learn because, this is the thing. Like, if they kept talking about this, like, they're going to wait and tweak as long as it takes until they get to a point where they're confident they have a team that can win Stanley Cups. That's what he said, right? Like, that's what I think it was Kent Hughes that said that. They're going to keep going until they get some, like, that they feel confident, right? And so I think it's really interesting how they talked about, they need to improve everywhere. They're not delusional, right?
No.
At all. And I think, and they're not getting ahead of themselves, which I think is really important. So yeah, that the other thing is, I don't think anyone hinted or asked about Sidney Crosby, but in my head, I believe that Jeff Gorton wants Sidney Crosby as much as I do.
Well, Pittsburgh is one of the other 31 teams in the NHL, and they probably don't want Pittsburgh to know that we want Sidney Crosby. So, checkmate. I'll do this. We have him right where we want him. He's on the road.
I believe it in my heart. But yeah, no, that was such a great press conference. I love listening to them talk. I love getting an idea of what the future is going to look like. And here's the thing: they haven't let us down yet, right?
No. No,
So,
it's there. I really enjoy these conversations. I really enjoy the vision that they have for this team. And this season, more than anything else, provided proof of concept that this could work. And I
yes.
think that it would have been very easy for them to sit up there and victory lap us on how well they did and everything. And they didn't. They stuck to the task at hand. They know we're not done. They know this team isn't finished. They know there's lots of work to do, and they're very excited to do it.
Yeah, and they also acknowledge that there's other teams nipping at their heels,
Yes.
right? Like that was one of the things they mentioned about how hard it is going to be next year is that there's going to be teams that they left in the dust that are going to be better and that they're going to be challenging them more for these spots.
There's like half a dozen of them. Like Detroit could take a step forward next year. Buffalo could finally take theirs. But even more, even closer in the rearview mirror is Columbus, right? They're going to be fighting for one of those spots. The Rangers, I doubt the Rangers are as bad next year as they were this year, right? Like,
well,
I think
that depends. They got a really good coach, but what if he decides he's sick of their toxicity and leaves?
he quits the Rangers. He was an assistant under Tortorella in New York, so he knows the game there.
Yeah,
we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I think the idea that they now, instead of being in a situation where they're looking up at the rest of the league, it's a different motivation when you're looking behind you to make sure someone's not chasing you, right?
yeah.
It's a
And
different.
they're all going to be chasing.
Yeah, and I'm so excited for where this team's headed, just because, again, like those games in November are going to have meaning. Those games like in the middle of December where it's like, oh, cool, we're playing the Wild on a Tuesday night. It's going to matter. It matters.
They're all going to matter. All right. Speaking of mattering, we do have a contest. It is a subscriber contest on YouTube. Ian has lots of Habs stuff that he likes to give away. And this time around, we are giving away Ian's signed Josh Anderson picture once we hit 4,500 subscribers on YouTube. And once we hit 5,000 on YouTube, we're going to give away Ian's signed picture of Arbor Xhekaj. So all you have to do is be subscribed and leave the words contest entry as a comment on YouTube. You only need to do it once. However long it takes us to get to 4,500 or 5,000, you just need to put it once and we will enter your name into a draw. And once we hit those milestones, we will do the draw. And in addition to our contests, we also do trivia on a daily basis. So Ian, what was yesterday's trivia question?
Yeah, we looked at the AHL in yesterday's question. So we wanted to remember the last time a Canadiens affiliate won the Calder Cup. That was the 2007 Hamilton Bulldogs, who won the Calder Cup. And while the big story was the Habs' future franchise goalie, Carey Price, leading the way in net, who led the Bulldogs in scoring in that playoff run? Laura, do you remember the answer?
Yes, I know the answer. I didn't guess it. It's Corey Locke. I don't even remember him.
22 points in 22 games, 10 goals, 12 assists for Corey Locke. Played 9 NHL games, so there's probably a reason you didn't really remember him, unless you were a huge Hamilton Bulldogs fan or just viewer of the American Hockey League over the last 20 years or so. All right, heading to today's question. Taking over the net in the middle of Game 3, Jakub Dobeš ended up winning that playoff game, becoming the third Habs rookie goaltender to win a playoff game in the last 20 years. He joined Carey Price, obviously, and this other goalie. Who's the other goalie who won a playoff game as a rookie in the last 20 years for the Montreal Canadiens? If you have the answer, put it in the comments down below. Write it to us any way you know how, and we'll shout you out on the next episode of the show.
You heard the man, and you can get in touch with us many, many, many different ways. First of all, please make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. You can find us on social media. We are Locked On Canadiens on TikTok, on Instagram, on Blue Sky, and at Gmail. And you can also leave the answer in a YouTube comment. Any one of those ways to get in touch with us. You can DM us on Instagram, hit us up on TikTok, but also follow us on there. We are a 5-day-a-week show, so make sure that you are subscribed to us on social media. I'm at The Active Stick. My co-host is at Maybe It's Ian. We want to thank everyone for listening, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.